You see, in this vast universe of ours, teeming with galaxies, stars, and planets, we find ourselves on this tiny blue marble called Earth. And on this Earth, amidst billions of souls, here you are, a unique constellation of experiences, thoughts, and emotions. You are, in essence, the universe experiencing itself through the lens of your consciousness. So when we speak of focusing on yourself, we're not talking about narcissism or selfishness. No, we're talking about tuning into the very frequency of existence. Imagine, if you will, a great orchestra. Each musician in this orchestra is playing their instrument with utmost dedication and skill. Now, if each musician were to constantly look around trying to mimic or compete with others, what would happen? Chaos, discord, a cacophony of sounds that grate on the ears. But when each musician focuses on their own part, playing it to perfection, something magical happens. The individual notes blend into a symphony of breathtaking beauty. You, my friends, are both the musician and the instrument in the grand orchestra of life. Your task is not to play someone else's tune, but to find your own unique melody and play it with all your heart and soul. But here's the rub, and it's a delicious one. The more you focus on yourself, truly and deeply, the more you realize that there is no self separate from everything else. It's like trying to bite your own teeth or look into your own eyes without a mirror. The very act of intense self-focus leads to the profound realization that you are interconnected with all that is. Let's ponder this for a moment. When you breathe, are you doing the breathing, or is the air being breathed? When you think, are you creating the thoughts, or are thoughts arising in you like clouds in the sky? When you feel joy, sorrow, are you manufacturing these emotions, or are you experiencing the ebb and flow of the cosmic tide? The truth is, my dear friends, that you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe. The boundary between you and not you is an illusion, a convenient fiction that allows us to navigate this physical plane. But at the deepest level, you are as much a part of the cosmos as the stars and the sea. So, when we say focus on yourself, what we're really saying is tune into the cosmic broadcast. It's like adjusting the dial on a radio to find the clearest signal. And that signal, that crystal clear frequency, is your authentic self. Not the self that society tells you to be, not the self that you think others want you to be, but the self that you truly are at your core. Now, you might be wondering, but Alan, if we're all one with the universe, why should we focus on ourselves at all? Why not focus on others? Here's where it gets interesting. You see, you are the only access point you have to the universe. You can't experience the world through someone else's consciousness. You can empathize, yes, but you can never truly be another person. Your experience, your consciousness is your unique window into the cosmos. It's like having a house with many windows. You can look out of any window and see different views, but you can't leave the house to look in from the outside. Your consciousness is that house and your senses are the windows. By focusing on yourself, you're not ignoring the view. You're learning to look through each window with clarity and appreciation. Let's take this a step further. Have you ever noticed how, when you're truly at peace with yourself, truly in tune with your own being, you naturally become more compassionate and understanding towards others? It's not because you're trying to be a good person or following some moral code. It's because you recognize yourself in others. You see that their struggles, their joys, their fears are not so different from your own. This, my friends, is the beautiful paradox of self-focus. The more you delve into your own nature, the more you realize your connection to all things. It's like diving into a pool. At first, you're acutely aware of the water around you, the boundary between your body and the liquid. But as you go deeper, as you relax into the experience, you start to feel one with the water. Your movements and the water's movements become indistinguishable. So, focusing on yourself is not about building a wall between you and the world. It's about diving so deep into your own nature that the illusory walls dissolve altogether. It's about tuning your instrument so perfectly that you resonate with the entire orchestra of existence. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, This all sounds well and good, Alan, but how do we actually do this? How do we focus on ourselves in a world that constantly demands our attention, our energy, our very essence? Excellent question. And the answer, like all profound truths, is both simple and endlessly complex. The first step, paradoxically, is to stop trying so hard. We live in a world that glorifies effort, that equates struggle with virtue. But have you ever noticed that your greatest insights, your moments of pure joy, often come when you're not trying at all? They come in the shower, on a leisurely walk, in that moment just before sleep claims you. This is because when you stop trying to grasp at life, life has a way of revealing itself to you. It's like trying to see a dim star in the night sky. If you look directly at it, it vanishes. But if you look slightly to the side, it suddenly becomes visible. Self-discovery works in much the same way. The harder you try to find yourself, the more elusive that self becomes. Instead, cultivate a sense of curious awareness. Become an observer of your own life. Watch your thoughts arise and pass away without judgment. Notice the sensations in your body, the emotions that ebb and flow like tides. Don't try to change them or control them. Simply observe. This practice of self-observation is what many traditions call meditation. But don't let that word intimidate you. Meditation isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some blissful state. It's simply about being present with what is moment by moment. It's about tuning into the ever-present broadcast of your own existence. As you practice this self-observation, you'll start to notice something fascinating. You'll begin to see the patterns in your thoughts and behaviors. You'll notice how certain situations trigger certain reactions. You'll become aware of the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. And here's the magical part. Once you become aware of these patterns, they begin to lose their power over you. It's like shining a light on a shadow. The shadow doesn't disappear, but it no longer seems so dark and frightening. You start to see that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your past experiences. You are the awareness in which all these things arise. This realization is profoundly liberating. It means that you're not bound by your past, by your habits, by society's expectations. You are free to choose in each moment how you want to be. You are free to play your unique note in the cosmic symphony. But remember, this freedom comes with a responsibility. As you become more aware of your true nature, you also become more aware of your impact on the world around you. You start to see how your actions ripple out, affecting others in ways you might never have imagined. This is where the focus on self begins to naturally expand, to include others. Not because you're trying to be altruistic, but because you realize at a deep level that there is no separation between you and others. Hurting another becomes as unthinkable as hurting yourself, because you recognize that other as another expression of the same consciousness that you are. Now, I can hear some of you protesting, but Alan, this all sounds very passive. Are you saying we shouldn't have goals, shouldn't try to improve ourselves in the world? Not at all, my friends. Action is an integral part of existence. The universe is in constant motion, constant creation. But there's a world of difference between action that arises from a place of inner clarity and action that's driven by fear, insecurity, or the need to prove oneself. When you're focused on yourself, in the way we're discussing, your actions become more like the growth of a tree than the construction of a building. A tree doesn't strain to grow. It doesn't set goals or berate itself for not growing fast enough. It simply reaches towards the light, extends its roots into the soil, and allows the process of growth to unfold naturally. In the same way, as you become more attuned to your true nature, you'll find that the right actions arise spontaneously. You'll be drawn towards experiences and opportunities that allow you to express your unique gifts. You'll naturally move away from situations that don't serve your highest good. This doesn't mean life becomes effortless. The tree still has to weather storms, endure droughts, and compete for sunlight. But its growth is organic, in harmony with its nature and its environment. Your life can unfold in the same way, not through forced effort, but through aligned action. Let's take a moment to address a common misconception about focusing on oneself. Many people equate self-focus with selfishness or narcissism. They worry that by turning their attention inward, they'll become self-absorbed and disconnected from others. But this couldn't be further from the truth. True self-focus, the kind we're talking about here, is not about inflating the ego. It's about seeing through the illusion of the separate self altogether. It's about recognizing that your true nature is vast, boundless, and inherently connected to all things. Think of this. If you have a glass of muddy water, stirring it up will only make it cloudier. But if you let it sit still, the mud gradually settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. Your mind is like this water. The practice of self-focus allows the mental and emotional turbulence to settle, revealing the clear, pure awareness that's always been there. As this clarity emerges, you start to see yourself and the world around you with fresh eyes. You begin to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary, the miracle of each breath, the play of light on leaves, the subtle interactions between people. You realize that life isn't something happening to you, but something you're... This shift in perception changes everything. Suddenly, the need to compare yourself to others falls away. You no longer feel compelled to meet some external standard of success or happiness. You recognize that your journey is unique, incomparable to anyone else's. Moreover, you start to see others not as separate entities to be judged, competed with, or impressed, but as fellow travelers on this cosmic journey. Their successes become your successes, their joys your joys, not because you're trying to be noble or spiritual, but because you genuinely feel the connection. This is the great paradox of self-focus. The more deeply you explore your own nature, the more you recognize yourself in everything and in everyone around you. It's like climbing a mountain. As you ascend, focused on your own path, your view expands. You see more of the landscape, more of the interconnections between things. Now, I want to address something that might be bubbling up in some of your minds. You might be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, Alan, but what about the practical aspects of life? We still have to deal with jobs, relationships, responsibilities. How does focusing on oneself fit into all of that? Excellent question. And it brings us to a crucial point. The practice of self-focus isn't about withdrawing from the world or neglecting your responsibilities. It's about engaging with life from a place of greater awareness and authenticity. Let's take the example of work. Many people approach their jobs with a sense of separation. I'm doing this for the paycheck, or I have to put up with this to get ahead. But what if you brought the practice of self-focus to your work? What if, instead of seeing your job as something separate from yourself, you saw it as an expression of your being? This doesn't mean you have to love every aspect of your job or never seek to change your circumstances. But it does mean being fully present with whatever you're doing. It means bringing your whole self to each task, each interaction. When you do this, you might be surprised at how your experience of work changes. Tasks that once seemed tedious become opportunities for mindfulness. Challenging interactions become chances to practice compassion, both for yourself and others. The same principle applies to relationships. Many of us approach relationships with what can I get mentality. We're constantly evaluating, judging, trying to ensure we're getting a fair deal. But when you're focused on yourself in the way we're discussing, relationships become something entirely different. Instead of trying to get something from the other person, you focus on being fully yourself in the relationship. You bring your authentic self to each interaction without pretense or manipulation. Paradoxically, this, because when you're caught up in trying to be what you think the other person wants, you create space for real intimacy to develop. Now, this doesn't mean that focusing on yourself makes all of life's problems magically disappear. You'll still face challenges, still experience ups and downs, but your relationship to these experiences changes. Instead of being tossed about by the waves of circumstance, you become like the deep ocean, affected by the surface storms, certainly, but maintaining a profound stillness in your depths. This brings us to another important point. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean you become impervious to pain or negative emotions. In fact, you might find that you feel things more intensely. But you also develop the capacity to be with these feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Think of it like weather patterns in the sky of your consciousness. When you're not focused on yourself, when you're caught up in reacting to the world around you, you're like a hot air balloon buffeted by these weather patterns. You rise with the warm currents of positive emotions and plummet with the cold downdrafts of negative ones. But as you develop self-focus, you become more like the sky itself. You provide the space in which these weather patterns occur, but you're not defined by them. You can experience a thunderstorm of anger or a sunny day of joy without losing your fundamental equanimity. This ability to be with your experiences without being consumed by them is incredibly liberating. It allows you to engage fully with life without being enslaved by your reactions to it. You can take risks, pursue your passions, and open your heart to others, knowing that whatever happens, your essential nature remains untouched. Now, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea that focusing on yourself ultimately leads to greater compassion and connection with others. This might seem counterintuitive, especially in a world that often equates self-focus with selfishness. But let's explore this a bit deeper. When you're not focused on yourself, when you're constantly looking outward for validation or direction, you're operating from a place of lack. You feel incomplete. So you're always trying to fill that void with external things, approval, achievements, possessions. This state of lack often manifests as competition, jealousy, or indifference towards others. But as you turn your attention inward, as you begin to recognize your inherent completeness, something remarkable happens. You no longer need anything from others. You can appreciate them for who they are, not for what they can give you. Your interactions become less about getting and more about giving, not in a martyred, self-sacrificing way, but as a natural overflow of your own fullness. This shift is palpable. People can sense when you're approaching them from a place of wholeness rather than need. They relax in your presence, they feel seen and accepted, and often they begin to recognize their own wholeness reflected in your eyes. This, now focusing on yourself, can become a profound gift to the world. By doing the inner work of self-discovery, by peeling away the layers of conditioning and false identity, you give others permission to do the same. You become a walking invitation to authenticity. But there's the beautiful thing, you're not doing this for others. You're not trying to be a good person or a spiritual exemplar, you're simply being true to your own nature, and everything else flows from that. This brings us to an important distinction. The kind of self-focus we're talking about is fundamentally different from self-improvement as it's commonly understood. Many self-help approaches start from the premise that you're somehow incomplete or broken and need to be fixed. They offer techniques and strategies to make you better, more successful, more lovable. But the self-focus we're exploring starts from the recognition of your fundamental completeness. It's not about adding anything to yourself or achieving some future state of perfection. It's about removing the obstacles to the recognition of who you already are. Think of it like this. You're like a radio that's always broadcasting your unique frequency. But over time, this radio accumulates dust and grime. It gets knocked out of alignment. The self-focus we're talking about is the process of cleaning and tuning this radio so that your true signal can come through clearly. This process isn't always comfortable. As you turn your attention inward, you'll likely encounter aspects of yourself that you've been avoiding or denying. You'll come face to face with your fears, your insecurities, your unhealed wounds. But remember, these aren't you. They're just accumulated dust on the radio. By shining the light of awareness on them, you begin to dissolve them. And as these obstructions clear, something miraculous happens. You start to recognize that the peace, love, and fulfillment you've been seeking have been within you all along. They're not something to be achieved, but something to be uncovered. This recognition changes everything. Suddenly, life becomes less of a struggle and more of an adventure. You're no longer driven by the need to prove yourself or accumulate experiences. Instead, you're free to engage with life from a place of curiosity and joy. Now I can almost hear some of you thinking, but Alan, if we're already complete, if everything we need is already within us, why do anything at all? Why not just sit in meditation all day? But that would be missing the point entirely. You see, recognizing your inherent completeness doesn't mean you stop engaging with the world. Quite the opposite. It frees you to engage more fully, more authentically, because you're no longer driven by lack or fear. You can throw yourself wholeheartedly into life. Think of it like this. Our river doesn't flow because it's trying to get somewhere. It flows because that's its nature. In the same way, when you're in touch with your true self, action arises naturally. You create, you explore, you connect, not because you need to, but because it's a joyful expression of who you are. This is where the focus on self intersects beautifully with the concept of purpose or calling. Many people struggle to find their purpose, thinking it's something they need to figure out or discover. But when you're truly focused on yourself, you realize that your purpose isn't something separate from you. It's simply the unique way you express your being in the world. Just as each instrument in an orchestra has its own timbre and range, you have your own unique gifts and way of being. Your purpose is to play your note, to be fully yourself. And the beautiful thing is, when you do this, you naturally contribute to the harmony of the whole. Now, this doesn't mean that focusing on yourself makes life perpetually easy or pleasant. You'll still face challenges, still experience pain and loss. But your relationship to these experiences changes fundamentally. Instead of seeing difficulties as obstacles to be overcome or punishments to be endured, you start to recognize them as opportunities for growth and deepening. Each challenge becomes a chance to know yourself more fully, to peel away another layer of illusion. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating. It means that nothing in your life is wasted. Every experience, whether pleasurable or painful, becomes grist for the mill of self-knowledge. You no longer need to divide your experiences into good and you can welcome all of it out of the rich tapestry of your existence. This acceptance doesn't mean passivity. You can still work to change circumstances that don't serve you or others, but you do so from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Your actions become responses to life rather than reactions against it. As we near the end of our exploration, I want to touch on one more crucial aspect of focusing on yourself, the recognition of your own mortality. In our culture, death is often seen as something to be feared, denied, or fought. But when you're truly focused on yourself, death becomes not an enemy. Contemplating your own mortality brings everything into sharp focus. It strips away the trivial and reveals what's truly important. When you realize that your time in this particular form is limited, you naturally become more present, more alive to each moment. Moreover, recognizing your mortality helps you see your life in the context of the greater whole. Just as each wave arises from and returns to the ocean, you arise from and return to the vast field of consciousness that underlies all existence. Your individual life is a unique and precious expression of this consciousness, but it's not separate. This perspective allows you to hold your life with both care and lightness. You can commit fully to your journey, pouring yourself into each moment, while also recognizing the ultimately ephemeral nature of all things. It's a delicate balance, but one that brings immense freedom and joy. So, my dear friends, as we come to the close of this exploration, I invite you to embrace the practice of focusing on yourself, not as a self-improvement project, not as a way to get ahead in the world, but as a journey of discovery into the very nature of your being. Remember, you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through the unique lens of your consciousness. By focusing on yourself, by diving deep into your own nature, you're tuning into the broadcast of existence itself. This journey of self-focus is not always easy. It requires courage to look honestly at yourself, to question your assumptions, to sit with uncomfortable truths. But it is infinitely rewarding, for as you come to know yourself more deeply, you also come to know the world more intimately. You'll find that the more you focus on yourself in this way, the more naturally compassionate and connected you become, not because you're trying to be a good person, but because you recognize at a fundamental level that there is no everyone, and everything you encounter is another expression of the same consciousness. So go forth, my friends. Dive deep into the ocean of your own being. Explore the vast landscapes of your consciousness. Tune the instrument of yourself so that it resonates perfectly with the cosmic symphony. And remember, this journey never ends. Each moment offers a new opportunity to know yourself more deeply, to express your true nature more fully. Embrace it all, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and challenges. For in the end, it's all the dance of existence expressing itself through the miracle of your life. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. May your journey of self-focus bring you ever deeper into the wonder and mystery of existence. And may you play your unique note in the cosmic symphony with all the fullness and beauty that is your birthright. The universe is not only stranger than we think, it is stranger than we can think. And you, my friends, are that universe. Know thyself, and you shall know all. Peace be with you.